Welcome to China Tech Talk, a weekly discussion of technology and startups in China. I am John Artman, editor-in-chief at TechNote, and as always, I'm joined by Matthew Brennan, founder of China Channel. And so this week we are giving you the third part of a three-part series about internet celebrities here in China, influencers, KOLs, Wang Hong, whatever you want to call them. And so this week we talked with Elijah Whaley, who's actually he is the chief marketing officer at ParkLU. And so this episode, so the previous few episodes, like we're kind of looking at from an analyst point of view. And then our last episode, we looked at it from the perspective of someone who actually is a KOL, and who actually has experience doing a lot of this marketing, a lot of this content creation. And then this week we talked with Elijah, who is really kind of able to give us almost like the view from the back end, because Elijah is his job is marketing, digital marketing and video, and then his girlfriend actually has become a makeup influencer. And so we talk a lot about a little bit more about the business as well as some of the bigger trends when it comes to internet celebrities in China.
Yeah, so I think we've got three very different viewpoints. They've all got distinct voices, and they're all experts in their own right. You know, having someone from Tencent, having someone who's actually, literally become famous in China, and then someone who's from the marketing aspect and it really has a lot to say. I mean, Eli is fantastic. I remember meeting him, and we had a long conversation in Paris when we were both talking at this event there, and he really has such a deep knowledge of this area and such forward-thinking theories. So I'm really excited to have him on today. And but this whole idea of having sort of 3 episodes that cover the same area, the same topic, the same phenomenon from different aspects with different viewpoints and different voices is something that we hope to do a lot more of in the future. We kind of did it with bike sharing as well, right? We had bike sharing where we had Mobike was on, and we covered it before ourselves. Because a lot of these topics in China, I think for our audience, we accept that a lot of people outside China, we want to give an episode that covers the basics, covers a lot of the sort of broad area of what's going on, and then we want to go a bit deeper, and we want to get experts in who can talk about it from different angles, because this, that's the advantage, I think, of what we're trying to do here with China Tech Talk, is that we're trying to cover topics from the Chinese internet, China technology in a way, in a deeper way than is covered usually in global media. Because both me and John have talked about this, and I think we talked about this on the very, very first podcast, is that we both feel that a lot of the coverage globally is not doing justice to what's going on here, and there's a much deeper narrative and a lot more interesting stuff going on here than most people realize.
Exactly, and the thing is, a podcast is one of the best formats to get a lot of these discussions and ideas out there. And so this is kind of like the first time we're formally trying to do a bit of a series. Matt and I have talked quite a bit about other topics that we can do this about, and I think that for us at least, we find it very interesting to do these types of things. But we want to hear from you. We want to know what do you think of having a series of episodes about the same topic from different perspectives, and what do you think of the show? Are we doing a good job? Do you like it? And if there are some parts that you don't like, let us know, because actually it's the negative feedback, the criticism that actually helps us to improve the best. So either do that in iTunes, or you can just reach out to us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Both of our profiles are in the show notes. But so enough of Matt and I talking. Now we give you Elijah Whaley, Chief Marketing Officer of ParkLU. Eli, thank you so much for joining us on the show today to talk a little bit more about live streaming and key opinion leaders from the perspective of a marketer and a marketing agency.
Excellent. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this topic.
And we're really excited to talk to you about it as well. But before we kind of get into the meat of things, tell us about, who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are right now.
Okay. I think, as most expats in China, maybe it's not a very direct path. But I'm originally from the American Midwest. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, Warren Buffett territory. And I, at a young age, started producing video content and have been in the video world for a long time. I originally came out to China as part of my university studies. And it was just a language exchange type program for a year out back in 2011. And then I was invited back out to join kind of a startup in 2013. And I've been in the startup scene ever since then here in Beijing. And early on, back in early 2014, I was with a travel advertising startup. And we were working with Weibo KOLs a lot. And so that was my first introduction to this industry and to this kind of revolutionary form of gaining attention and communicating with an audience.
Cool. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing right now.
What I'm doing right now. So what I'm doing at that, actually after working with the advertising agency for a while, I met a very beautiful, very talented young lady named Maggie. And I recognized in her that she had a very interesting talent, which was being a makeup artist. And she also had a very interesting personality. And I asked her at that time just after we started dating, what she really wanted, career-wise for herself. And she said she'd really like to start a label. At that time, I had been reading a book called Content Inc. by Joe Pulizzi. And the theory that he posed in there is that brands should build marketing channels first, and that they should do that through content, and that they should offer value and build trust and really understand a vertical audience that they communicate with, so that they can then create and sell products that people actually want to buy, and they're already primed to buy, and you already know what the ROI is once you deliver that. So I took that kind of theory, and I proposed to my girlfriend that we should turn her into a makeup influencer, and we could do that through creating video tutorials, and I know how to shoot and produce, and she knows how to do makeup really well, and we just need to figure out some of the kinks of how to make her personality shine, and also how to break through the noise online and through social media. And we have been doing that for 2 years, and that has been going quite well. We really hit our stride in the second year, and we've worked with some really, really top brands, anyone from Nike to H&M to Maybelline and Chanel. And Maggie now travels to different locations to do live events. She was part of the Meitu Shouji launch that had 300 plus KOLs at that event. She was just down in Shanghai last week for a new makeup brand that's launching called PopKit with a company called We Media. She has a regular live streaming show on Maypai on Tuesday nights at 8, and we've kind of designed it a little bit like a regular talk show where I sit behind her and I eat food and just make kind of comments about what's going on and answer some of the fans' questions. And so she's been doing really well. And so the cool part for me is, while that's all been going on, I've been a more classical digital marketer and and brand marketer working with startups. And I just recently, last month, was invited to join ParkLU. And ParkLU is a influencer, KOL, search, communication, payment, tracking, and analytics KOL platform, software as a service. And we saw some really nice strategic alignment there that, hey, this is a startup, and I'm a startup guy, I'm a marketing guy, and also I've been really keyed into this whole influencer marketing thing for a while, not only working with them in the past, but also building one myself. And so it was a very nice strategic alignment. And so I'm very excited to be at this place where I kind of feel like a full circle influencer marketing guy that has very nice understanding on all sides about how a brand can leverage a KOL and how a KOL can leverage their attention. And I see it as one of the big drivers in change on how everything from businesses will be built to how businesses communicate with people and sell products. And I consider it to be a very, very relevant topic now and in the future.
So, so looking at ParkLU specifically, just briefly, I'm curious. So, are you guys more of like a Wang Hong agency where you're connecting brands with these KOLs, or are you more like a marketplace?
No, we're more of a marketplace. We're a curated marketplace. So we're not like some of the other marketplaces out there that just analyze and try and track data on here's everybody out there on all the platforms, and you can kind of search and try and pick. We've used data to curate and invite. Ours is an invite-only platform. So I think at this point, we actually have about 3,000 KOLs on our search discovery engine, and they mainly fall into the fashion, beauty, travel, mommy, baby, parenting, lifestyle verticals. And so we really focus on that. And it is software. It is log into the system, search and find, create one of the problems with this industry is there's no, and I deal with this all the time on the Millennium Fu side, is there's no standard operating procedure for how brands execute on campaigns. And so we standardize that procedure for both parties and allow them to communicate through this and to run campaigns much, much more effectively and much quicker, and providing that maximum value through there. And then the tracking and analytics part of it is also very important. And we do this through our website and through our app. And it is what's really cool too is because we're not an agency, but we also do maintain a very strong relationship with our KOLs, and we're very active, and they're very active with us. And we do community training where we actually invite them to come to do training sessions. We'll be hopefully doing one here in Beijing soon. And so we're very committed, but it is software. We do have some services that we provide, but that is one of the things that we're not an agency.
Okay, got it. So Eli, the last 2 episodes we've been discussing this area in different ways. So I think the listeners have got an idea that, okay, live stream and KOLs in China have blown up. They're huge. They're making lots of money themselves, right? Through tipping, through gifting. The apps are monetizing this in different ways. But what we want to talk today about is from a brand perspective. Okay, I'm a business. I'm a brand, a makeup brand, for example. How do I fit into this whole thing? How do I insert myself typically into this environment? How are brands looking at what's happening?
Well, I think that there's the story is really interesting to me, and not to get away from the question, but I would like to focus real quick on something. The idea that the influencers have the attention. They're the ones that people are going to for information and resources on what they should buy and what they should be, what's hot and what's not. And some of these influencers are smart enough and are using that to create their own brands. And right now on Taobao, of the top 50 stores on Taobao, 23 of them are actually run by KOLs. And KOLs are actually building multi-million dollar businesses that are really, they are going to compete with major brands and labels. And the brands have to figure this out. If they don't do this, what I kind of put it in the very strong statement of, if you don't work with a KOL, you're going to be replaced by one. And the reason why is because they have the attention. There is, in China, there's not the advertising tools and the closed ecosystems of WeChat and the user behaviors don't allow advertising to work very well here, traditional advertising. And because brands are, I think some of it has to do with with culture. Brands are not people and can be trusted the same way. And they've also haven't made the investment into moving beyond selling people something to actually being involved in their lives and helping them, where KOLs have. They've figured out how to actually leverage and really be valuable on social media. And because brands haven't, now they have to work with KOLs because the ship has sailed. There's a few brands out there that are doing some really cool stuff. I think Maybelline, they're one of the most interesting brands that I've worked with, and I think they're one of the best ones out there that are leveraging influencers. They do a regular live streaming show. I don't know exactly how regular it is, but they do a regular live streaming show across all the platforms. They have these big trees of cameras or multiple people operating cameras or the phones, and they invite KOLs to come and be on their Maybelline show. And so those KOLs then bring their audiences to that platform or to that show. And then that audience is able to say, hey, look, actually Maybelline is offering a lot of value here. And they're bringing in other stuff and they're doing something very different and interesting. And that's a really, really wonderful, really beautifully executed strategy and idea that you would start to actually really offer people value and not just gate content, blocking, what people actually want to see with your brand message, or trying to maybe sneakily embed yourself. Sometimes I get a little bit critical where I'm kind of like, well, you're being a leech a little bit in this environment. Instead of actually really, really offering people value, you're still looking at it in a very traditional sense of saying, well, because I don't get the attention, I'm just going to buy it and just smash myself into this message somehow. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we'll see at times brands fail with KOL marketing, is because they still don't get it. They're still operating on a very old traditional marketing model of gating or blocking or trying to be exclusive instead of trying to be involved in people's lives.
Yeah, I think it's a completely sort of new paradigm for a lot of people to get their heads around, right?
Oh yeah, it's super tough, super tough. It's very unnatural, to say the least.
Okay, how does a typical KOL campaign work, Eli, for a brand?
Typical KOL for a brand, they need to start with, what is the product that they have that they're trying to promote? Who's the target audience for that? And that's really important, is really understanding who is meant, or who should, or who would actually want to buy this. And I think that's one of the things that brands could be doing differently, and they could be doing much better, is actually first communicating with experts or with KOLs themselves and saying, would your audience want to buy this? Instead of just saying, I want your audience to buy this. We have moved away from forcing stuff down people's throats to, there's the same level of consumerism, but people have a preference and they have lots of options. So you should be a part of offering people what they actually want. And so they should be communicating with a KOL saying, does your audience want this? And then they move into a negotiation point with a KOL saying, okay, we would like to promote this thing. How do you think this should be promoted? Sometimes brands take a little bit more control and say we want it promoted in a certain way, and that's where you'll see some conflict comes up, is when a brand wants control and the KOL wants to serve their audience. And if the brand's control or demands are in conflict with what the KOL believes is best for serving their audience, then you'll have deterioration in the communication or in the ability to execute the strategy or the campaign properly. So there needs that first level of finding and then communicating the strategy and working with the KOL can be tough. It really can be tough.
Well, one of the questions that I have about this is like matching like the brand image with the KOL image.
Sure.
So how, like, can you give us a little bit of insight into how that actually works? And so, you mentioned trying to determine if the product matches what the audience wants. How does that play into it?
Yeah, well, I mean, and for brand, especially for typical big brands, like that's a huge concern for them. Does this KOL line up with our brand image and what we want to project and how we want people to feel about us? And I think that's also where a lot of hesitation comes from brands when working in this sphere. And to be honest, my real opinion is brands need to let go a little bit, and they need to loosen up, and they need to realize that people are going to talk about your brand however they want to anyways. I mean, welcome to the internet. So if you really want to be a part of the story, then you need to facilitate what people are talking about in a more organic, natural way, because we run into issues all the time of brands saying that the content needs to contain 70-80% my content and my name and my pictures, when the KOL is saying that's not what people want. We want your brand to be a part of the story, but it can't be 80% of the content. It needs to be natural, and it needs to be organic, and it needs to be something that people want to engage with. And I also see that brands, I just did this was kind of typical, but a recent one where the brand was really strict about, I want the images and the pictures and things, how they're laid out, to be like this. And I want it to match all of our other branding, which all of their other branding was created by some really high level agency. And I am starting to believe that these high level agencies, they're not getting it. They're missing the point. Their need to be at such a high level of production to make C-level guys happy is not natural. It's not what people really want. People want to see a picture taken on a cell phone and not on a $1,200 DSLR with a raw format and perfect lighting. Like, that's not real. That's not how this product actually is interacted with in real life.
Well, Eli, so I'm curious. A lot of it seems like this insecurity comes from like how they're used to running ad campaigns.
Correct.
And so I'm curious, is there a relationship between like the amount of control that some brands demand versus like how much they're spending? Are they demanding control because they're also spending a lot of money on these KOL campaigns?
Yes, I'm sure that there is. I think, yes, there is probably that logic in there. I mean, everybody, in the end, what matters to people, obviously, is that they sell stuff, is that ROI factor. But one of the things that I think a lot of brands and a lot of people who think about KOL marketing at a very baseline thing is they really see it. They're not thinking about it properly in my mind. They're looking at it just like they would an ad. And that means that I'm paying for X number of people to see this thing at this one point. And so you have this message in the center. Imagine a circle. And there's this one little circle around that that are the people that viewed it. And that's what I'm paying for. But what they're actually missing is the entire story of actually what you're paying for is, one, you're paying for someone who has built a very close relationship with people. Really, really close. We know that these KOLs get messages from some of their followers when they have when they break up or have a baby, or, they've improved their life in some drastic way and really actually changed things for them. There's an actual relationship that you are being a part of. Then another aspect is you're not just paying for eyes, you're paying for content creation. If you go to an agency or you go to a creative or a photographer, a videographer, or a writer, you're going to pay that guy or that person or that agency to create that thing. That's really freaking expensive, super expensive. Now, you're getting this creation process as part of the package. But a lot of people aren't even putting that into the whole mathematics of KOL marketing. They're missing out on a huge point of the value of working with a KOL. They're content creators too. They're not just an audience. And then on the back side of it is not this first layer of attention that you're paying for. It's not the number of views that you're seeing. It's not just 100,000 views and 1,000 or 100 comments and 50 reposts and whatever many likes. You don't understand that you're actually influencing culture and the spread of a message, because that's what a KOL does. That's what an influencer does, is they have the influence to impact people and change the direction of thinking. And so not only, and I like to call it like, there's a KOL trickle-down economics. And the idea that if you get a really big KOL, other KOLs are going to talk about their stuff. Other influencers are. People are also going to share that to their circle of influence. There's this whole trickle-down effect that unfortunately cannot really be measured through the traditional devices that people use, through trackable links or through the whatever other metrics that people are trying to use to say this is or isn't working. And there's this whole backside of the story that these brands are really, really not understanding the real power of what it means to work with an influencer.
Yeah, that thing you said about the content being too polished and too professional, that really resonates with me. I think in so many ways, actually, on the internet and on the Chinese internet, that people don't want something that's too polished. Often the stuff that does really, really well and is really popular is stuff that people can relate to. If we look at examples, within the app economy, there's an app called Kuaishou in English that's doing really, really well. I think it's like the top video app in terms of the activity, and it's just full of videos of people doing very stupid things like eating strange stuff or just dancing. And these are very, rural, lower tier city people doing stuff that a lot of people in Beijing and Shanghai think is very unsophisticated and quite frankly boring. But it's very real to a lot of people.
Correct.
If we look at stickers, for example, on WeChat, the stickers that Chinese people love sending are often not these really, really nice animated professional Disney stickers, for example. Correct. They're the ones that are just really crappily drawn. They look awful. And
I know.
They've got like these stupid faces on them. They look like they've been drawn by a 3-year-old. But they somehow resonate and they're real to people.
Correct.
So
correct.
I think we can see that concept across so much of the Chinese internet.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Matt, I think that's a really good point. I mean, also because I think half the time, especially as foreigners and expats, we end up focusing on like what we can see, which is like tier 1, maybe tier 2 cities where people are going to be more affluent. They are going to have, quote unquote, more class. But really, I mean, the real consumption power in a lot of ways that in some ways has yet to really be unlocked is going to be in tier 3, tier 4, cities, and even going down to, as you said, rural rural and villages and things like that. And so I think that it's really important for listeners inside of China and outside of China to remember that, China is not Beijing. China is not Shanghai. It is not Shenzhen. It is a lot more than that. And so if your only experiences are of those three cities, for example, or maybe Hangzhou or Suzhou or somewhere on the East Coast, you're not really seeing the way that most people actually live.
Correct. Well, and even in the first tier and second tier cities, though, look, I mean, for yourselves, I think you could probably measure this, but look at what is really popular. Even the Poppy Zhangs and the other KOLs, the level of production that is being distributed and that people are enjoying is shockingly low. I mean, Poppy Zhang herself, she looks like she's literally just in an apartment, not even in a nice apartment, and they're not doing special effects. I mean, you know what her special effect is speeding up the video so that her voice is really high. Like, I mean, it can't get any more simple than that. And the backgrounds aren't special. When you look at what even some of the top tier producers of tutorials are making, and the comedians, high and low, that this is not TV film quality stuff. This is really basic, shot a lot of times shot on a cell phone. Maybe didn't even, I don't know that for sure, but it might not have ever even seen a linear editing, program. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is being produced going directly from a phone to the internet. And even for myself, what's so funny is we will shoot, in the case of Millennium, we'll shoot in RAW for the client so we can send that off to them. And then Maggie will take those photos, import them into her phone, use her phone as the image editing tool, and then send that out. And so it's actually taking something that's so nice and kind of dumbing it down. But that's because that's what works.
Sure. I think that's not just China as well. When you look at the, Snapchat and apps that are blowing up in the States, Musical.ly, the editing tools there are, really, really basic, and it's democratizing the whole process of content creation so that, anyone can become, a content producer and a KOL in their own right. The barrier to entry is just getting lower and lower as the tools on your phone become better and better. And anyway, that's not really what people want, right? People actually just want stuff that's, resonates. They don't want high value, production and lots of special effects and filters.
Correct. Well, and the reality is, and this is one of the reasons why this is an undeniable truth, this whole KOL thing, and why I think it's only going to get not worse for brands, but this is just the beginning, is the idea that you just said it there, the democratization of content. And really what that means to me is I want to know about a very, very niche topic. And there's only, X number of people in my community or in the world that want to know about that. And there's going to be one guy or a couple of people that are known as the expert and that are willing to put in the time to create something to educate or entertain me in some way. And brands there wouldn't be positive ROI for them to create that thing for that small niche. They need that content creator. They need that expert. They need that person to do that and to be involved with that and to manage that community and then pay to be a part of that community. Because if they did it themselves, they would have to have just as many numbers of content creators in all of these specific little teeny niches creating content. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. And so this is very, very natural. This is very organic. It's not going away. It's only going to get worse or better. And what that means for users is it means that, hey, if I'm interested in bobbleheads from 1984, then I can go and watch the bobblehead guy's video and learn about bobbleheads. And that was really good for me. And I'm really interested in bobbleheads now. And I can just focus on that little niche there. Well, I, as a brand that might want to reach the bobblehead audience, I'm probably not going to focus on that little teeny thing, but that audience is still valuable because it's attention. You're paying for that attention. And it is this democratization of how content's made. It's the democratization of interests and categories of interest, and people really just getting to consume what they actually really want to consume.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of really interesting points to be made there. But I mean, I think that just to highlight a few things. I mean, the attention economy, I think, is kind of what we're really getting at here when we're talking about influencers and KOLs. Where, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, like TechNode, for example, we follow kind of a typical publishing model in a sense, where we're pushing out content every single day, and we want it to be valuable to our readers, not in the sense that we're trying to sell something, but valuable, like there's an intrinsic value to it. But the thing is, at the end of the day, we're still competing with, you know, live streamers. We're still competing with mobile video games, MMOs, or what have you. We're still competing with, Walk the Chat, for example, for eyeballs, who do great content about WeChat. We're competing, we're competing with Matt in a way as well, with China Channel and his great content. Because what we're doing is we're competing for attention. You know, like our competitors aren't just other news sites or other China-focused news sites. Our competitors are pretty much everyone.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. And that's why the best brands in the world have become media companies. I mean, the best example of the best attention gaining brand in the world, I think right now, is Red Bull. They have been able to, their Red Bull media has become more valuable than Red Bull itself. The offline events, the entertainment, the stuff that they do is so big that Red Bull, yes, the brand as an energy drink, gets to stay relevant and gets to be on people's minds. And yeah, when you're going to drink an energy drink, you think of Red Bull first. Of course you do, because they're always top of mind. But becoming a media company and really understanding attention is what is going to make brands be able to exist in the future. And those that can't become media companies or don't understand that or can't leverage it, or their audiences are too dispersed or too fragmented, KOLs and micro KOLs and this whole attention economy like you're talking about, that's where this becomes really, really important.
Yeah. But actually, so I wanted to take a quick step back for a second, because we're talking about a lot of really interesting things. But so we talked a little bit with Lauren for the last episode about the experience of being a KOL, and so she talked a little bit about what she did, how she did it, and some of her experiences. But one of the things that I wanted to ask about was KOL agencies. So, because like for you guys, you're more of a marketplace, and so less of a middleman, for example. But I think one of the things that a lot of people don't see of any KOL in China is that more than likely they're not actually self-employed. More than likely they are working through an agency with a brand and with a platform. So So I mean, like from your perspective, I mean, like are they a good thing? Are they helpful for the ecosystem?
The ones that do it right probably are. It's right now, but there's this whole industry. It really still is in an infancy stage. I think China's much more. I think that's actually something we will talk about. But I think China's much more advanced than the rest of the world when it comes to this. And there needs to be some amount of expertise to be able to do this. And what I mean by that is when people are so unfamiliar, marketers and brands are, with working with KOLs, that they potentially need someone to hold their hand. And what we'll see at ParkLU, which is interesting, is after someone maybe has felt comfortable or is dissatisfied with their agency, they might come and then say, okay, I'm ready to just do this on my own because I get it. Or agencies actually do use our platform because of the curated nature of it and the ease of conducting business. And I think the KOLs too, a lot of these KOLs, they're creatives, or they're specialized in some other field, whether it be design, or they're a mom, or some other aspect. And so they're not familiar with working with brands to conduct a marketing campaign. I mean, that's definitely a totally foreign process. I can't believe how many KOLs I talk to, and I say, hey, do you have like a media kit or a website or a pitch deck or something that talks about yourself so that we can figure out how to work with you or how brand works with you or something? And I tell you what, I bet you it's 95% have nothing like that. And so they don't even have a way of communicating with a brand on a baseline. And the next step beyond just communicating who you are and the value that you can provide is, okay, what's the procedure to getting from you as a brand have a product that you want me to talk about, and I'm going to do that, and then you're going to pay me for it. I mean, like, without having someone either hold the hand through the process or having a standardized procedure and a standardized format, then of course it's going to not be scalable. And I think that's really what it comes down to for brands is, okay, yeah, this influencer marketing or KOL marketing thing sounds really interesting, and I know I need to do it because they have all the attention and I can't buy it except this way. But how can I scale it? Because is this going to require me to have, one manager to manage one KOL, and it's like a one-on-one type situation? That's not going to work. Especially the larger you are and the more impact that you want to have, that's not going to work.
Okay, so Eli, sorry. So that's all the upside. But I mean, the thing is, we're dealing with a potential with basically at least last year, and I think from what I understand this year, it's plateauing a little bit. But it's live streaming, and especially with KOLs, it's become a bit of a gold rush. And in China, when there's a gold rush, like everyone just jumps right into it, not really too concerned about the ethics of how they're being successful.
Sure.
And so, you just talked a little bit about the upside, but what about the downsides?
I think the downsides, there's a lot of potential downsides. We know that there are lots of agencies out there that are managing their own KOLs or building their own KOLs, and they are not building them ethically. They're either totally fake bot-driven accounts, or they're a consortium of bot-driven accounts that are literally, like you can do this. You can create hundreds of accounts that repost and watch and create and look at each other's content and redistribute content and such. And you can that's one of the problems, and one of the scary things for brands is you can make a KOL, you can totally fabricate it and make it look pretty legit. And that's scary. That is literally burning cash. And I totally get it. I mean, and so there are people that are not scrupulous. There are KOLs that are very genuine and very real that also use techniques for making content look like it has a lot more interest and attention than it really has. I mean, Taobao, there's a whole economy. There is an entire economy, not just in China, but around the world, based on bot traffic. And it used to be used for click-throughs on websites and ad revenue and all sorts of things like that, and app, reviews and whatever else. And it has definitely come in and to the KOL economy, and it can be scary. It can be really scary. It can be a total waste of time and money. And that is totally driven by people that realize, hey, here's an opportunity to make a quick buck.
Yeah, I think there was a really great video that you put in one of your you run a WeChat group, Eli, that's about KOLs, obviously. And there was a video in there that was pretty much showing behind the scenes around what looked to describe it, a KOL farm.
Yes, exactly.
If that's a phrase, I don't know, but it's literally a rather large house, sort of apartment block that's just full of women, young women who are, each have their own little room, and they're each live streaming constantly all day, and they're being managed by this agency.
Oh gosh,
and it's like it's almost like chickens in a chicken farm, like they're all in their own little pens, but they're all live streaming, and they're all like influencers on Chinese social media.
Well, there's kind of this whole, to be honest, that's almost a separate world. There is this whole other KOL weird money-making economy that actually gets kind of confused, I think, a little bit with the rest of it. And there is a whole economy around what you're describing is KOL management companies or teams that have young, pretty girls that do a range of talented and untalented acts on live streaming that try and get young or old men to give them tips. And they also use techniques where they have other viewers that pay to start to try and activate these viewers to give money and create kind of like competitions and stuff. Right. And I kind of, to be honest, I don't really focus on that economy very much. I mean, it's so black and so off the norm of actually offering users value and a brand could ever tap into, because a brand is never going to be able, for most brands, are never going to be able to tap into a half-talented pretty girl that's trying to make money off tipping on a live streaming site. That's not gonna, you cannot sell, even tennis shoes to those guys likely. And that's not what they're there for. That's a whole different like KOL-ish community that I don't think we're really talking about when we're talking about this subject. Right. So it's like that's more sort of gifting focused monetization, whereas because it is confusing, all the different, this area has so many different overlapping terms, it has so many, like, it's moving so fast, there's so many platforms, but there is actually two quite separate things here, right? One is more sort of pretty girls, Wang Hong-ish, for gifting, and then another one that's more sort of e-commerce driven, brand driven, for usually fashion and makeup and lifestyle area. Correct. And that's where I think it's really good to define, like, this is a separating point, because for KOLs that are in this whole gifting economy, to me, that's a whole totally different realm. And what's interesting about Lauren that you're talking about before, and who's I've actually like consulted with and talked with, she was in that world and is now trying to leave that world and get into becoming very, not legit, but become a brand KOL that is actually able to leverage her own influence and have real influence and have something that brands can leverage and she can leverage in more of an e-commerce standpoint. Because she realizes that for several reasons, that whole gifting economy, that's, in my mind, I think that's a flash in the pan. That's not what is going to bring people value for a long time. Not that paid content isn't something that's on the horizon or happening right now, but that whole thing is a little bit of an anomaly.
Well, it's also let's just call a spade. I mean, it's manipulation in a sense. I mean, it's
totally.
It's similar to what you have in the West with cam girls, except that in China,
it's toned down.
pornography is illegal. I mean, pretty much any adult content is illegal. Not necessarily to possess it, but certainly to create and distribute it. Can come with very harsh penalties in China. So you have these, as you say, like these live streaming farms, if you will, that have these women, but like they're there as young women attracting men to pay them for having this type of show. And so yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I think that it's very, very different from what a brand might want, and certainly what a brand is going to do, because there's basically no connection almost between these two types of live streaming. But Matt just mentioned something that I want to focus on a little bit more now is that connection to e-commerce. Because I was just thinking, it's taking off in China, live streaming and KOLs. It's really taking off in China, but it hasn't really done so much in other parts of the country. And it seems to me that a lot of it is because of that direct connection with e-commerce. Like Taobao, yep. they're a bit of a late player to the game, but now that they're in it, they're pretty much dominating.
They're powerhouse. Totally. Well, this is interesting to me. And I think you meant it hasn't taken off in the rest of the world, not in the rest of the country, correct?
Yes, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really interesting is one of the guys that I really love, and I do see him as, as an orator and such, is Gary Vaynerchuk in the US. And he's really, really big on attention and understanding where it's at. And he really believes and leverages and talks about the influencer marketing world and what's happening in business and what's happening in commerce and such. Mm-hmm. But one of the reasons I like him so much too is because in the rest of the world, he's seen as a visionary. In China, he's just talking about what's going on. Right. And I really think that China is so far advanced when it comes to payments and commerce and applications like WeChat and Weibo, where you can go directly from content to a purchase environment, to live streaming on Taobao, where the product that's being talked about, you just have to click to buy. Like, we are living in the future. This is what the rest of the world is going to do. If you want to create a successful business in the States right now, you would take what's happening in China and you would just do it over there. I totally, absolutely believe that, because that's what the guys over there are saying. This is going to happen. It's going to be really cool. And I'm just like, it's already happening. It already is really cool. And it works. And we know that because the biggest e-commerce stores in China, the biggest e-commerce stores in China, are run by KOLs. And it's working so well where the Amazon of China, the Taobao, is now creating its own influencer incubator that it's investing into to ramp up its own thing. They know that this whole having entertainment and education wrapped up in content in a show environment is what is working. It's what's driving sales. It's what's getting people excited and getting them to click and buy right now. And this is what people want to watch and what they want to do. And it's a new level of consumerism that the rest of the world is very maybe unaccustomed to or not comfortable with, or thinks is maybe going to happen, or just totally unfamiliar. But it's happening. It's totally happening right now, and it's not like, oh, this thing might. It's working.
So talking a lot about how China really is ahead, and how that this at some point we are going to see something similar in the rest of the world, but how far off do you think it might be, and what is it about? Like, are there any like special Chinese characteristics that aren't necessarily going to translate very well?
Yeah, I don't know about all of that. I do know that, and I think, Matt, you're more of an expert on this than I am, that Facebook is trying to copy a lot of the things that are in WeChat. That closed ecosystem kind of stuff, and payments and how people interact on social much differently. And so I think we'll see. I think the technology is changing already in the West. From the Snapchat is also more of a closed environment that's invite only through QR code or their own style QR code stuff. Less of an open platform. I think what is not happening yet, and which is almost bizarre, and I think a lot of it also has to do with probably finance laws and banking and stuff like that, but is the payments, their payment system and how they're doing stuff is just way, way behind the curve. Not having that embedded and working well with social is almost crazy to me. And then the e-commerce part, they just have not figured this out. I remember like 5 years ago when Facebook got really, really excited because they were like, oh, look, you can now do a Facebook ad. And when you click on it, then you can click to purchase through an ad. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And it's like they haven't gone anywhere beyond that. They have not gone anywhere beyond a banner ad of a watch or something like that. And you can do some retargeting and such, but based on similar audiences or friends and such. But it's just way, way behind the curve. And it's going to take, if Amazon really wanted to do something big, they'd be following what Taobao's doing. And if Facebook wanted to do something big, they'd be following what WeChat's doing. And I think that China really is setting themselves, or has already set themselves as a leader in those areas. And when it transfers over, I don't know. I don't know. It's funny because the live streaming kind of stuff kind of was popular, got some buzz in the West, but it didn't take off. And a lot of that might have to do with the differences in culture, and also the differences in access to, qualities of content or types of content. One of the things that I talk about sometimes is like, one of the reasons that KOLs and the content and videos and stuff that they create in this live streaming took off is because the government standard controlled TV is so freaking boring. It's so bad.
It's really bad.
And the movies, and the movies are bad. And the entertainment that you can gain through what the high level producers are making in China is so bad. And so, of course, when someone makes something that's targeted and interesting, and they're an interesting personality, and then they create that in some short form that I can consume much better on a small screen on, my packed subway ride to work, like that makes a lot of sense why this took off here. And when in the West, you are competing with standards of content that are very, very high. And some of the brands are really, really figuring it out. The SNLs of the world and the some of the different TV shows kind of stuff, they're figuring out how to short form their content and deliver that in ways that audiences can consume and such. So there's a little bit of balance there of like the West has the ability is adapting some of the great stuff they already have, where in some ways China never had the great stuff. So like it was really easy for people to break into the entertainment market and the attention market because the audiences were so starved.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like one of the big things, like my wife and I, we talk about moving back to the States, and my biggest impression, like the biggest sense that I get of moving back to the States would just be, for better or for worse, how slower things are there, and especially compared to China. Because I'm thinking about, if we look at the people that would want to get into live streaming, it's basically Facebook, Google, and Amazon probably. But it's one of those things. It feels like because they're basically only competing amongst those three, that they're not going to be moving as quickly. Whereas you look at Taobao, for example, and also Weibo is a good example as well, where when they first got started and KOLs and influencers really started to populate, they found that there were third-party KOL agencies that kind of took over the platform in a way, and that Weibo was not able to monetize off that because they did not take the initial effort to control that ecosystem from the beginning. Whereas with live streaming, it seems that they've learned from their mistake, and now with their with being closely tied to Alibaba, having that synergy with the live streaming and e-commerce, it makes a lot of sense. But also, part of it feels like these big Chinese companies, they have to integrate these features and these things as quickly as possible, because if they don't, someone else is going to do it, and it may not be another big player. It could be a small player that just scales rapidly, with backing from a bigger player or some well-connected VCs, and just kind of really disrupts that space. And so, with Taobao going into live streaming, going into the KOL economy, a lot of it is in a sense defensive. They're doing it because if they didn't do it, they would be disrupted on that front.
Totally. And I mean, and that was, we've worked with different apps that have launched and stuff like that. Like there's a Yes app that was totally just live streaming to e-commerce, and correct. I mean, and that's one of the hard parts in China is that, like, and actually Facebook's starting to play this game too, but if you're small, like, it's really, really tough because the big guys will adapt really fast and they'll try and block you as well as they can from their audience being able to ever interact with your platform or your content or what you're doing. And, that's what's so interesting right now about what Facebook's doing with Instagram, totally on the assault with Snapchat. And I think that's a huge risk, is that, hey, we have the users, so we'll just duplicate what you're doing, and there's no reason for them to leave our ecosystem to go to yours because it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's quite brutal what they're doing with Snapchat recently.
Oh, dude, it's tough.
Yeah, quite shameless and quite but a very solid strategy. But very, very question. It's hard to say it's definitely questionable because in the internet space, everyone copies each other, right? So I guess the core question is stories, a big enough innovation to be considered something that you should be able to patent?
That's a big question.
Right? I mean, that's a big question. Is it just like an incremental thing, or is it actually a game changer that you should have been able to legally protect themselves from stuff like this happening?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I talk to lots of people about, especially when it comes to like content and stuff. Good luck with protecting yourself. You just need to be fast. Yeah. And like, you just need to be the first one, and just, kind of a prayer kind of thing, because it's that's tough. That's tough. And I do think not to get too far off the topic, but I think what Facebook's doing is very shameless, but it's pretty freaking smart.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost Chinese of them, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But so looking forward, the next maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 years or so. I mean, like, how do you think, this technology and this ecosystem, of influencers and e-commerce and live streaming, I mean, how is it going to change? How is it going to evolve?
Well, I think I'm dead serious when I say that brands are either going to figure this out working with influencers, or they're going to die. And what I mean, and that maybe that's only in specific categories, but I really do believe that they have to figure this thing out, because if they don't, the KOLs will build the brands of the future. And so what I've seen taking place, which is very interesting to me, and I've actually heard of this happening in the US too, is exclusive deals, where brands are essentially, acquiring KOL brands, and they are doing exclusivity deals, and you have a big enough audience, and I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, and you're going to produce X amount of content based around, my brand or my concept. And that's going to be part of our marketing value. And we're going to repurpose the content you make for other things. And you're going to become a paid brand advocate. I think that's a viable strategy that a lot of brands are, that some innovative brands are considering or kind of testing right now. I think that, like I said, I think KOLs are going to build some really, really mega brands in the future. I just think that they have an opportunity, and these creatives who maybe aren't naturally adapt to business are going to hook up with businessmen and women, and they're going to create something really big and powerful because they understand attention today. And I've already sat down and I've talked with some of these people, and they realize that, and I've talked with brands that their entire strategy is based around KOLs and micro KOLs. And I think that is a very, very viable strategy for the future. Especially in somewhere like China, where you're seeing a shift from, SEO to SSO, the social search optimization, the idea that you're going to start to be able to search within WeChat, and I think that's going to take over things like Baidu. And so brands will have to adapt new strategies for that. And I think KOL accounts are going to be the ones that get bumped to the top, and their content that they're creating because it's the most popular. And so that just drives that whole economy from a technical standpoint that much further forward. And so if brands want to compete, or the brands of the future are likely to be built on the backs of these content creators and of these people who have figured out how to offer value first and how to build niches and how to build passion with people and actually capture their hearts and their minds and later their wallets. But I think from a technology standpoint, that's really tough to really figure out what's going to happen. I think in some ways, like WeChat is like such an amazing commerce and communication tool, but and in some ways though, in my mind, it's almost becoming less and less like social. It's almost becoming more like the internet. It's an application that can do everything. I can walk up and I can scan a bike, and then I can go and pay for something, and then I can chat with my boss and send a file to an intern, and then I can send a picture of where I'm at in the bar to my girlfriend, and that is social, I guess. I don't know, but it's also like it's just the internet. It's just how things are done, where pure social entertainment value applications like what I see what Weibo is doing, where they are really giving content creators a huge amount of flexibility from live streaming and short stories and pictures and video and text, and it's really fun place and an open space to create and distribute content and to consume that. And it's it's fun. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's growing, is because once you've opened up your blue file on WeChat and you read some of your articles that I think are way too many clicks to get to, you can go to Weibo where it's just open and you can see what's kind of trending and what's happening. And it's not so closed. And then you have the Taobaos who, they're getting smart. I mean, if Taobao is literally creating an influencer, initiative, and what I think that really means is, especially for what I think is going to happen with live streaming, is it's the TV. It's the TV of the future. And to do that properly, you need to standardize the times that things play. You need to standardize what the content is playing at that time, who hosts the show, what content is being distributed and played. And because people do, we're not just creatures of habit. We do want, I want to tune in to this thing. And if I want to tune into it, it can't just be random all the time. Like, I want to see my favorite entertainer who talks about tennis shoes. And yeah, sometimes when he talks about those tennis shoes, I buy them. But that's what's interesting to me. And so if I want to tune into that person, they need to have a regular, 7:30 show on Wednesday nights that I can watch this person that I really like. And we're already seeing that take place. I had kind of mentioned it maybe before that, Millennium has her own show now, a beauty show on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. or 8 p.m. And she literally every week she gives the platform a brief and says, this is what I'm going to talk about this week. And they say, okay. And they kind of approve that and talk about it a little bit and how it can be a little bit better. And then she does the show, and it goes for they promote it for about an hour. And then the show goes for about an hour and a half. And then it's off, and it's every single week. And so her followers and the people that she gains can come and tune back in every week. And so I think there will be a standardization of that stuff, because that's what needs to happen. It won't be just so random, like, oh, I'm walking down the street, I'm going to start live streaming now and expect people to just come and start watching me and me offer them value. That's not really going to work very well. What you can do is you can record those shows and then you can display them so someone can consume that content later. But the fun part about live streaming is that it's live. and you can interact with it, and you can see what's taking place, and ask questions and such.
So most of this episode has been, about like brands and established KOLs and kind of how they can get better. But what about the people who, they're thinking about becoming an influencer, they're thinking about becoming a KOL? Is there any advice that you would give them?
Oh, totally. I do a lot of this kind of stuff. But my first advice to anybody that wants to get into this industry and wants to serve an audience, or my first key things are, one, I believe that you actually need to be an expert. You actually need to be talented at something. You need to be able to provide people value. The pretty faces and stuff, that will work for some period of time, but unless you're not offering people value in a real way long term, there's only so many like Kardashian girls that can take that space. So you need to actually be able to offer value. And then the next thing that's very, very important in my mind is going as niche as possible. And that means, to the point for me, and we do this a lot in marketing, where you name the person that you are going to focus on and who you're going to serve, and you know how much money they make and where they went to school and what they spend their time doing and where they're, getting their social media or their entertainment from. And you get that person to fall in love with you. And they won't go to anybody else. They will recommend you to anybody to know or to be entertained by your subject matter. And you get that person to love you. And then the really cool thing is there's actually lots of people that look like John or Jane, and get those people to love you first, and then let them tell other people about you and grow and grow and grow. And then you can maybe expand even your topic matter to serve a broader audience. But if you go broad, you'll fail. You got to go small.
That's actually super interesting, especially that last part. And so part of my interest is in management and leadership. And one of the most important things for like a new manager or a new leader in an organization is to find that first follower. And then that first follower will then, basically evangelize your management and your leadership to the other people in the organization that they have influence over. And so in fact, as that leader, one of your main goals should be to find that first follower, find that advocate in your organization that is going to really help you succeed whatever your goals are. And so it's really interesting because basically, from your description, what we're talking about then is kind of a natural kind of social human social phenomenon where you find people who are interested in what you're doing, who believe in you, who have formed that personal connection, and then go out and they tell everyone else, and that's how you form your tribe, how you form your group.
Totally. Welcome to the age of the intimate CRM. Like, you got to have real relationships with these people. They're not just a number with kind of a name and an account or something else linked to it. Like, this is a relationship.
So you've got to go as niche as possible, get them to fall in love with you, know your target. Anything else, Eli?
Yeah, I mean, and then you gotta produce what you can produce well. If you write well, write. If you are good on camera, get on camera. If you have a nice voice, then do audio. Whatever you are gonna do, you're gonna do for a long freaking time, and you're probably not gonna be paid for it for a while. So it better be something you enjoy, and it better be something that you can do at scale, meaning that you're going to have to do this like every day. And so do something that you can actually, that you're inclined to, because it's a long game. It is. I think that's one of the hard parts for a brand too, and why they didn't focus on it early and why they're missing out now is this whole influencer thing. It's a long game. It takes a while for someone to build trust with you and to love you, and it's hard work to create content. Right. And to do that day in and day out and send that message and at first have nobody viewing it and nobody liking it, and then one person hearts it, and then only one person hearts it for a month, and then two people. Like, brands don't like that, but people who are passionate and love what they do and have the vision, they can push through.
You mentioned it took you and Maggie you've been doing it 2 years, right, to get to where you are right now.
Yep.
And you only really started to crack it in year 2.
Yeah. And I think we've only really hit stride in the last 6 months. So it was 18 months of just banging it out. And both of us are talented in our own respects, but we weren't focused on what wasn't happening. We were focused on what was going to happen.
Yeah. And that's for two people who are like, quite, well, yourself, a marketing expert is still taking you all this time. Now, having said that, the case study you just gave of the baby milk, the Irish brand for I think it's baby milk formula. Those guys, you're saying, just like,
there's
very
of
quickly.
course there's but whenever I advise anybody on marketing, I never ever say, don't ever focus on the viral, focus on the long game, because that's not realistic. It does happen, of course, and people get really excited and motivated by that, and that's what hits headlines. But it's not the slow grind of working, 18-hour days because you had a full-time job and then you went home and live streamed or shot a new video tutorial that's sexy and anybody really talks about. But that's the reality.
So Eli, again, thank you so much for taking the time and giving us this incredible insight. I think there's a lot of information in just this short period of time that you've given us. But so what about you? So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Sure. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can. There's not too many Elijah Whaleys. Maybe you have to spell it out or something, but there's not too many Elijah Whaleys in the world, so they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I always like chatting with people on WeChat too. You can just do Elijah Whaley, it's all one word, or you can send me an email. You can just email me at. I'm horrible with email actually, but you can email me at elijah@parklu.com.
Perfect. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, we would really appreciate it if you took a minute or two just to give us a review on iTunes, or if you're using a different podcast player such as Overcast, you can just tap on that star button, and that will recommend this episode to everyone else in that network. Recommendations and reviews are a great way to show your support, so thank you very much.